Gurubhyo Namaha. Today we are going to see the Nationalism in India Unit 3, that is towards the civil disobedience movement. In 1922, Gandhiji withdrew the non-cooperation movement. He felt Satyagrahis need to be trained properly before they would be ready for mass struggles. Some Congress leaders were by now tired of mass struggles and wanted to participate in the election to the provincial councils that had been set up by the Government of India in 1919. C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru formed the Swaraj Party to argue for a return to council politics. Younger leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and S.C. Bose, that means Subhash Chandra Bose, pressed for more radical mass agitation for full independence. Worldwide economic depression had a bad effect on Indian politics. Agriculture prices began to fall and collapsed after 1930. Demand for agriculture goods fell and exports declined. Peasants found it difficult to sell their harvest and pay their revenue. In 1930, the rural India was in turmoil. Against this background and in response to the nationalist movement, the new government in Britain constituted a statutory commission under Sir John Simon. The commission was to look into functioning the constitutional system in India and suggest changes. The problem: the commission did not have any single Indian member but all Britishers. On its arrival in India in 1928, it was greeted with slogan "Go Back Commission" and all parties participated in the demonstration. Lord Irwin, the Viceroy, tried to win over the Indians with a vague offer of dominion status for India in an unspecified future and a roundtable conference to discuss the future constitution. Congress was not satisfied by this offer. The Lahore Congress session formalized the demand of Purna Swaraj or full independence for India. The civil disobedience movement was planned to paralyze the government by mass support by undertaking acts which the British government considered illegal but were protest against exploitative and suppressive measures. So Mahatma Gandhi had to find a way to relate this abstract idea of freedom to more concrete issues of everyday life. So he started civil disobedient agitation against levying duty on foreign clothes, reduction in land revenue, cutting down military expenditure and abolition of tax. The British government did not agree. They thought these were populist schemes to win over different sections of the society. Anyhow, Mahatma Gandhiji started the famous civil disobedience movement on 31st January 1930. Gandhi sent a letter to Viceroy Irving stating 11 demands. The most stirring of all was the demand to abolish the salt tax. Mahatma Gandhi started his famous salt talks accompanied by 78 of his trusted volunteers. The march was over 240 miles from Gandhiji's ashram in Sabarmati to the Gujarati coastal town Dandi. On 6th April, he reached Dandi and ceremonially violated the law manufacturing salt by boiling seawater. This marked the beginning of the civil disobedience movement. How was the civil disobedience movement different from the non-cooperation movement? People were now asked not only to refuse the non-cooperation with the British but also break the colonial laws. Thousands in different parts of the country break the salt law, manufactured salt and demonstrated in front of the government salt factories. As the movement spread, foreign cloth was boycotted and liquor shops were picketed. Peasants refused to pay revenue and chowkidari taxes. Village officials resigned, and in many places, forest people violated forest laws, going into reserved forest to collect wood and graze cattle. British reaction to civil disobedience movement. When Abdul Ghaffar Khan was arrested in April 1930, angry crowds demonstrated in the streets of Peshawar. Many were killed. A month later, when Mahatma Gandhi himself was arrested, industrial workers in Sholapur attacked police posts, municipal buildings, law courts, and railway stations, all structures that symbolized British rule. Mahatma Gandhi once again decided to call off the movement and enter into the pact with Irvine on 5th March 1931. By this Gandhi-Irvine pact, Gandhiji consented to participate in the Roundtable Conference in London, and the government agreed to release the political prisoners. In December 1931, Gandhiji went to London for the conference, but the negotiations broke down and he returned disappointed. With a great apprehension, Gandhiji relaunched the civil disobedient movement. Let us now look at the different social groups that participated in the civil disobedient movement. Rich peasant communities. The Patidars of Gujarat and Jats of UP were active in the movement. Being the producers of commercial crops, they were very hard hit by the trade depression and falling prices. As their cash income disappeared, it became impossible to pay the government revenue. Rich peasants became enthusiastic supporters of civil disobedience movement. They organized their communities to support and participate. They forced the reluctant members to participate in boycott programs. For them, the fight for Swaraj was a struggle against high revenues. But they were deeply disappointed when the movement was called off in 1931 without revenue rates being revised. When the movement was restarted in 1932, many of them refused to participate. The poor peasantry. Many of them were land tenants cultivating land they had rented from landlords. These people found it difficult to pay their rent during depression. They wanted the unpaid rent to the landlord remitted. They joined a variety of radical movements, apprehensive of rising issues that might upset for the rich peasants and landlords. The Congress was unwilling to support the rent campaigns, so the relation between the poor peasantry remained uncertain. What about business class? How did they relate the civil disobedient movement? Indian merchants and industrialists made huge profits during the World War I. They were keen on expansion of their business but reacted against colonial policies that restricted business activities. They wanted protection against import of foreign goods. They wanted rupee sterling foreign exchange rate that would discourage imports. To organize business interest, they formed Federation of the Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industries (FICCI) in 1927. Industrialists attacked colonial control over the Indian economy and supported civil disobedience movement. They gave financial assistance and refused to pay or sell the imported goods. For most businessmen, Swaraj was a time when colonial restrictions on business would no longer exist and trade and industry would flourish without any restrictions. But after the failure of Roundtable Conference, business groups were no longer uniformly enthusiastic. Now, let us see about the industrial classes. Initially, industrial classes did not participate in the civil disobedient movement in large numbers. Workers maintained distance from the Congress leaders, unlike the industrialists. Few workers participated in selected ideas of the Gandhian program, like boycott the foreign goods as a part of their own movements against low wages and poor working conditions. Railway workers strike in 1930. Chota Nagpur tin mines ore workers strike in 1930. Dock workers strike in 1932. But the Congress was reluctant to include workers' demands as part of its program of struggle. Another important feature of the civil disobedience movement was the large scale participation of the women. Women participated in salt march, marches, manufactured salt, picketed foreign cloth and liquor shop. Many went to jail. They were motivated by Gandhiji's call and considered to service to nation as sacred duty of women. Next, we are going to see about the limits of civil disobedience movement. Not all the social groups were moved by the abstract concept of Swaraj. The Dalits or untouchables were not moved by the concept of Swaraj. Congress ignored them for fear of offending the conservative high caste Hindus. Gandhiji declared that Swaraj will be impossible if untouchability was not eliminated. Many Dalit leaders wanted a different political solution to the problem of the Dalit community. They demanded reserved seats in educational institutions and separate electorate for Dalits. Dalit participation in the civil disobedience movement was limited. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar organized Dalit into depressed class association in 1930. He clashed with Mahatma Gandhi during the second roundtable conference on the issue of separate electorate for Dalit. When the British government considered Ambedkar's demand, Gandhiji began a fast unto death. He believed that separate electorates for Dalit would slow down the process of the integration into society. Ambedkar ultimately accepted Gandhiji's position and result was the Pune Pact of September 1932. It gave the depressed classes, later to be known as the scheduled caste, reserved seat in provincial and central legislative councils, but they were to be voted in by the general electorate. Some of the Muslim political organizations in India were also unhappy towards the civil disobedience movement. Many Muslims alienated themselves from Congress after the decline of non-cooperation movement and Khilafat movement. It was visible that after 1920, the Congress became more associated with Hindu religious nationalist groups like Hindu Mahasabha. Relations between Hindus and Muslims worsened and led to communal clashes. Every riot deepened the distance and widened the gap between the two communities. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, one of the leaders of the Muslim League, was willing to give up the demand for separate electorates if Muslims were assured reserved seats in the Central Assembly. M.R. Jaikar of the Hindu Mahasabha strongly opposed efforts at compromise.